I did not mean to board the Mafia boss's yacht. I only meant to escape a wedding where my future had been folded into a contract and handed to a man who smiled too much. The last thing I remembered before the marina was the sound of my own bare feet slapping against the polished hotel floor, my wedding dress gathered in both hands, my veil snagging once on a brass door handle before I tore free and kept running. Miami heat hit me like a wall when I burst through the side exit. Salt air. Car horns. Music from the terrace above. Somewhere behind me, 200 guests were probably turning in their seats, wondering why the bride had not appeared beneath the white arch by the ocean. Let them wonder. Wondering was kinder than knowing. My phone was dead in my hand, black screen, useless wait. My best friend, Chloe, had texted me 1 hour earlier, "If you need to run, go to see Grace at Slip 22. I thought she was being dramatic. I thought all brides had moments of panic before walking toward forever. Then I heard Nathan Vale in the groom's suite, speaking through a half-open door, calm as champagne. After the vows, her consent becomes automatic. Noah's fund transfers before midnight. She will cry, but she will sign. Noah, my little brother. 17 years old, gentle heart, long hospital stays, and a medical trust my father had built before he died so no one could ever bargain with his care. I had stood there in my dress, pearls at my throat, white roses in my hand, and understood that I was not a bride. I was a key. So I ran. Across the hotel service drive. Down the marina steps. Past men unloading coolers, tourists laughing over frozen drinks, a little boy pointing at my dress like I was a princess who had lost the story. Slip 22. I saw the name painted in gold on the stern of a white yacht. See Grace. Relief punched through me so hard I nearly sobbed. I climbed aboard without thinking, one hand gripping the rail, satin skirt dragging over polished teak. Chloe? I called, breathless. No answer. The deck was too quiet, too clean, too expensive. A black jacket hung over a chair near the aft lounge. Not Chloe's. A crystal glass sat beside a folded newspaper. Not Chloe's. My stomach tightened. I turned toward the gangway, ready to leave, but voices rose from the dock behind me. Find her before Nathan does. I froze. I did not know who had said it. I only knew I could not go back. I slipped through the nearest glass door and into a narrow hallway below deck, carrying my shoes in one hand and my crushed bouquet in the other. The air inside smelled like cedar, leather, and cold ocean air from hidden vents. My breathing sounded too loud. I found a small lounge and crouched beside a cream-colored sofa, trying again to wake my phone. Nothing. Dead. Outside, a deep vibration rolled through the floor. At first, I thought it was my heartbeat. Then the engine grew louder. The yacht moved. I stumbled upright and looked through a round window. The dock was sliding away. Miami was sliding away. My only plan was sliding away with it. No, I whispered. No, no, no. I rushed back into the hallway and nearly collided with a man standing at the end of it. Tall. White skin. Black hair. Black suit without a tie. Gray eyes that made the small space feel suddenly measured and owned. He looked at my torn veil, my bare feet, the wet hem of my dress, and the dying bouquet in my hand. He did not shout. He did not call for help. He simply studied me like I was the most unexpected problem the sea had ever delivered. Then he said, in a voice low enough to make panic pause, "Most brides do not break into yachts before sunset." The man at the end of the hallway looked like he belonged to silence more than the sea. He stood with one hand in his pocket, black suit untouched by wind, gray eyes moving from my torn veil to the bouquet crushed against my ribs. I had seen men like him only in stories people lowered their voices to tell, men who did not need to threaten because the room already understood. I took one step back and hit the wall. I did not break in, I said, which was a terrible defense considering I was barefoot, shaking, and standing inside a yacht that was currently leaving Miami without my permission. His eyebrow lifted slightly. You boarded without being invited. I thought this was my friend's boat. Your friend owns a 110-foot Italian yacht? I looked past him toward the stairs, calculating distance, doors, anything. Apparently not. For 1 second, something almost like amusement touched his mouth. Then it vanished. Footsteps sounded above us. 2 men appeared behind him, both in dark shirts, both stopping the moment they saw me. One of them looked at the bouquet, then at the man in the suit. Mr. Cross. The name hit me before the fear did. Cross. Julian Cross. Even girls who spent most of their lives in hospital waiting rooms and grocery store aisles knew that name in Miami. Hotels. Ports. Private security. Charities with his signature. Rumors with no signatures at all. My throat went dry. I had not boarded Chloe's emergency boat. I had boarded the private yacht of a man my fiancé's family would never dare offend in public and would probably fear in private. The taller guard stepped forward. She could be a plant. I am a person, I said before I could stop myself. My voice cracked, but it was mine. Not a plant. Julian Cross did not look away from me. Name. Ava Monroe. Why are you on my yacht, Ava Monroe? I hated how calm he sounded. Calm made panic feel childish. I lifted my chin because I had already run through a hotel in a wedding dress and had no pride left except the kind made of bone. Because I was told C. Grace was at Slip 22. One of the men frowned. This is C. Grace. Julian's eyes sharpened. My yacht is not listed under that name publicly. My stomach dropped. Chloe had not made a mistake. Someone had sent me here. The hallway seemed to tilt with the motion of the water. I do not understand. That makes 2 of us. The guard reached toward my bouquet. Check it. I jerked back. Do not touch that. His hand stopped only because Julian lifted 2 fingers, barely a gesture, but enough to freeze the air. No one searches her unless she agrees. The guard looked unhappy. Julian did not care. He turned back to me. Are you carrying a phone? Dead. A weapon. I have a heel in my hand and very little patience. This time the almost smile lasted half a second longer. Dangerous combination. I need to get back to shore. We left 3 minutes ago. Then turn around. The hallway quieted. Even the engines seemed to hum lower. Julian studied me. That is not impossible. But it is inconvenient. I laughed once, sharp and close to tears. I was supposed to be married 10 minutes ago. Inconvenient is no longer a word that frightens me. Something changed in his face then. Not softness. Attention. Real attention. Who are you running from? I thought of Nathan's voice behind the half-open door. Her consent becomes automatic. Noah's fund transfers before midnight. I thought of my brother in his hospital bed, pretending not to be scared when doctors used words he did not understand. I swallowed. I did not run from love, I said. I ran from a contract wearing a tuxedo. The 2 men behind Julian exchanged a glance. Julian did not. His eyes stayed on mine like the rest of the yacht had disappeared. The groom's name. Nathan Vale. The moment I said it, the air turned cold. Julian Cross went completely still. One of his men muttered something under his breath. Julian's voice lowered. Vale. You know him? I know the family. Then you know why I need to leave. No, he said quietly. Now I know why someone wanted you on my yacht. My fingers tightened around the bouquet. What does that mean? Before he answered, a chime sounded from the lounge behind him. A wall screen flickered on with a muted local news feed. My own face appeared beneath a headline about a missing bride. Then Nathan appeared beside the hotel arch. Perfect tuxedo, perfect grief, telling cameras I had been overwhelmed and needed help. My stomach hollowed. Julian watched the screen, then looked at me. Tell me the truth, Ava. Did you board my yacht by accident, or did someone make sure accident would be the only door left open? The question stayed between us while Nathan's face filled the yacht screen behind Julian Cross, handsome and wounded and lying beautifully for every camera at the hotel. I watched my almost husband lower his eyes at exactly the right moment, as if grief had been rehearsed in a mirror. Ava is fragile, he said on the broadcast. She has been under pressure for months. We only want her safe. I almost dropped the bouquet. Fragile. It was always the word men chose when a woman became inconvenient. Julian muted the screen, and the sudden silence felt cleaner than Nathan's voice. Answer me, he said. Did someone send you here? I looked down at the dead phone in my hand. Chloe's text. Slip 22. See Grace. If you need to run. My best friend sent me the slip number, I said. But she would never send me to you. One of Julian's men, the taller one with a scar near his eyebrow, spoke carefully. Boss, Vale could have spoofed the number. I turned on him. Chloe is not part of this. I did not say she was. Julian lifted a hand, and the man went quiet. Then he looked at me again. Tell me about Noah. The sound of my brother's name in that room made my breath catch. How do you know about Noah? Because Nathan Vale does not marry for romance. He marries for leverage. I hated him for saying it so easily. I hated myself more for needing to hear it. I sank onto the edge of the cream sofa because my legs had remembered they had carried me through marble, heat, and fear. Noah is my younger brother, I said. He has a long-term medical condition. My father left a fund for his care, but I control the decisions until Noah turns 21. And after the wedding? Nathan said it would simplify everything if we merged legal authority. My voice thinned. He said husbands and wives should not act like separate corporations. Julian's eyes darkened. Romantic. I thought he was protective. Protection that requires your signature is usually ownership with better manners. The sentence landed too close to my heart. I looked away, toward the round window where Miami was now a bright line shrinking behind us. I heard him before the ceremony. He said my consent would become automatic after the vows. He said Noah's fund would transfer before midnight. He said I would cry, but I would sign. The room seemed to tighten around the words. No one interrupted. That was the first mercy. Julian walked to a cabinet built into the wall and opened it. Inside were phones, radios, charging cables, things that belonged to people who planned for emergencies instead of discovering them in wedding dresses. He took out a satellite phone and placed it on the table between us. Not in my hand. Not as a command. A choice made visible. Call your brother. I stared at it. Just like that. No one speaks for you on my yacht. Not even me. I wanted to believe him. I did not. Not fully. But the phone was there, and fear had priorities. I dialed the hospital first. My fingers remembered the number faster than my mind did. The nurse at the desk knew my voice. Ava? We have been trying to reach you. Mr. Vale called twice asking about discharge authorization. My blood went cold. Do not release anything to him. Do not give him access. Put a note in Noah's chart. I am alive, I am safe, and I do not authorize Nathan Vale or his family to make decisions. Julian stood by the window, looking out at the water, giving me the privacy of a man pretending not to listen while making sure every word mattered. The nurse transferred me to Noah's room. He answered on the fourth ring, sleepy and scared. Ava? My throat broke open. I am here. Nathan said you got confused. I closed my eyes. Nathan lies when truth becomes expensive. Noah was quiet. Then, in a whisper, he said, Did you find the note? I looked at the bouquet in my lap, white roses crushed, ribbon damp, stems bent from running. What note? In the flowers, he said. Dad said if Nathan smiles too much, run. For 1 second, the yacht, the ocean, and Julian Cross all disappeared. There was only Noah's voice in my ear and the bouquet in my lap, crushed white roses hiding something my little brother had risked telling me too late or exactly in time. Noah, I whispered, what did you put in the flowers? His breathing crackled through the satellite phone. Not me. Dad. My fingers went numb. Our father had been gone for 4 years, but the way Noah said Dad made him feel suddenly close, as if he had been standing quietly behind the wedding arch all along, waiting for the lie to show its teeth. Explain. Remember the blue folder he made me promise not to open unless you got engaged to someone with a Vale name? I stopped breathing. I remembered a blue folder in the back of my father's safe, sealed with tape and labeled home insurance in his neat block letters. I had never opened it because grief makes ordinary labels feel sacred. You opened it? Last week, Noah said. After Nathan asked the hospital about transfer authority. There was a note inside. It said if the Vale family ever came for the trust, I should hide the code where only you would look when everything fell apart. I looked down at the bouquet. White roses. Baby's breath. Satin ribbon. My hands started searching before my mind caught up, gently parting damp petals, checking the ribbon seam, the plastic around the stems. Julian moved closer, but stopped several feet away. Watching. Waiting. Not reaching. Ava, Noah said, smaller now, are you really safe? I glanced at Julian Cross, the man whose yacht I had accidentally boarded, the man everyone in Miami described with either fear or favor. He was standing in a lounge of polished wood and ocean light, giving me the phone, giving me distance, giving me something Nathan never had, the room to answer for myself. I am safe enough to think, I said. That is more than I had an hour ago. Julian's eyes changed at that, but he said nothing. My thumb found a stiff edge beneath the bouquet ribbon. I pulled. A strip of paper slid free, rolled tight around a broken rose stem, and secured with dental floss. Noah's dental floss, mint green, from the hospital kit he hated. I almost laughed. I almost cried. I unrolled the paper. Written in Noah's uneven handwriting were 6 numbers and 1 sentence. Dad said if Nathan smiles too much, run. Beneath it, smaller, Monroe Storage, Unit 417. I read it aloud. Julian's stillness sharpened. One of his men stepped closer. Boss, Monroe Storage is near the port. Julian looked at him. And Vail Maritime owns half the block across from it. The name hit the room like a locked drawer opening. Vail Maritime. Nathan's family company. The same company whose logo had appeared on folders Nathan kept in his home office, the folders he always closed when I entered. I pressed the phone closer. Noah, listen to me. Do not sign anything. Do not leave with anyone. Tell the charge nurse to contact Dr. Palmer and Aunt June. Only them. Nathan said Aunt June is dramatic. Nathan thinks every woman with a boundary is dramatic. Noah gave a small, scared laugh. It steadied me more than courage did. Ava? Yes. Dad knew, did he not? I looked at the 6 numbers until they blurred. He suspected enough to leave us a door. After I ended the call, the lounge went quiet except for the engines and the soft slap of water against the hull. Julian reached for the paper only with his eyes. May I? He asked. That question again. May I? The most dangerous man in the room kept asking permission, and it made every other man in my life look louder and smaller. I handed him the note. His jaw tightened as he read. This is not just about your brother's fund. Then what is it about? The Vallas use guardianships, medical trusts, and port charities to move money where questions are expensive. You knew. My voice was sharp. I knew pieces. And you were meeting about those pieces today. He did not deny it. Yes. The yacht shifted beneath us, steady but alive. I stood, clutching the dead bouquet like evidence. Then turn this boat around. Julian looked toward the window, where Miami still hovered in the distance, bright and unreachable. If we dock now, Vail's people will be waiting. I am not hiding on your yacht while Nathan tells the world I am unstable. His gaze returned to mine. I did not say hide. Then what are you saying? He handed the note back. We go to the port, but not as a runaway bride returning to explain herself. We go as a woman with a code, a witness, and a reason every camera at that hotel should regret turning on. My heart pounded. And what do you get? For the first time, Julian Cross looked almost honest enough to be dangerous in a new way. A chance to settle a debt with the Vail family. I stepped closer, the hem of my dress whispering across the floor. I am not your weapon. No, he said quietly. You are the person holding the key. That means I follow your hand, not the other way around. Julian Cross did not smile when I challenged him. He did something worse. He listened. The kind of listening that made every word I had thrown between us stay exactly where I placed it, not softened, not rearranged, not stolen and returned as his idea. You are not my weapon, he said. You are not my guest either, unless you choose to be. Right now, you are a woman on my yacht who needs options. I wanted to distress that sentence. I wanted to find the hook in it, the hidden contract, the place where his generosity turned into ownership. But the note from Noah lay in my palm, damp from my fingers, and Miami floated behind the glass like a city deciding which version of me it would believe. Julian turned to the man with the scar near his eyebrow. Marcus, get me the port map, Monroe storage records, and anything tied to Vail Maritime within 5 blocks of Unit 417. Marcus nodded and left without another word. The second man stayed near the stairs, watching me like I was either fragile cargo or a very inconvenient storm. I hated both possibilities. "Stop looking at me like that," I said. He blinked. Julian glanced at him. "Do as she asks." The man lowered his eyes and stepped back. It should have felt small. It did not. In the life Nathan had built around me, even my discomfort needed committee approval. On this yacht, my sentence moved a grown man 3 feet away. Julian walked to a cabinet and removed a pair of flat-deck shoes, still new, cream-colored, simple. He set them on the floor near me. "For your feet, if you want them." I looked down and realized the soles of my feet were pink from running over hotel tile and marina wood. "Do all Mafia bosses keep emergency bride shoes on board?" His mouth moved, not quite a smile. "No. My sister visits. She refuses to wear heels on boats." Sister. The word surprised me. It made him less like a rumor and more like someone who had been annoyed by family in ordinary ways. I slipped into the shoes because pride was not the same as punishing my own feet. They fit badly, but better than fear. Marcus returned with a tablet and spread a digital map across the lounge table. "Monroe Storage sits here," he said, pointing. "Unit 417 is in the north building. Vail Maritime owns the warehouse across the service road through a shell company. Same company shows up in the transfers we were reviewing." Julian looked at me. "Did Nathan ever ask you about storage units?" "No, but he kept asking about my father's old files. He said we should clear out anything unnecessary before the wedding." "And did you?" "No." Noah cried when I mentioned it. I swallowed. He said Dad hated empty rooms. Julian's gaze held on me for half a second. Smart boy. I looked at the bouquet again, at the broken stem that had carried a code through my wedding like a prayer with petals. "I need my family attorney. Name: June Calloway. She was my father's friend. Nathan said she was too emotional for legal work, meaning she refused to be useful." Julian picked up the satellite phone and placed it beside my hand. "Call her." I did. Aunt June answered on the second ring with traffic noise behind her and panic already in her voice. "Ava, thank God. Where are you?" I looked at Julian, then at the ocean, then at the note. "On a yacht." A pause. That is not the clarifying answer I hoped for. Despite everything, I laughed. It came out broken, but real. I ran from the wedding. Nathan was going after Noah's fund. Dad left a code for Monroe Storage. The traffic noise stopped. "What code?" I read her the numbers. Her silence changed the air. "Ava," she said slowly, "your father made me promise never to tell you unless the Valas forced your hand." My chest tightened. "Tell me now." "There is a safe deposit box inside that unit. Not a bank box. Private storage. It contains copies of medical trust records, port charity transfers, and a sworn statement from your father about Vail Maritime. He believed they were using vulnerable families as paper shields." Julian's eyes lifted to mine. The yacht seemed to tilt, though the water was calm. "Can Nathan access it?" I asked. "Not without you or Noah. Your father locked it under both your names." Relief and terror arrived together. "June, local news is saying I am missing and unstable." "I know. I am already drafting a response." "Do not draft. Record." My voice steadied as the idea formed. "I want a video statement. From me. Before Nathan writes my story in permanent ink." Julian watched me like he had just found the center of the storm and decided it was beautiful because it was standing upright. "Good," June said. "Say where you are only if you are safe." I looked at Julian cross again. Dangerous man. Quiet room. Open phone. Shoes I had chosen to wear. I am safe enough to speak. When the call ended, Julian angled the tablet toward me. "We have 40 minutes before we reach the port entrance. Vail will expect panic. Cameras will expect tears. Then they will be disappointed." I smoothed the front of my ruined wedding dress with both hands, not to look perfect, but to look present. Julian stepped back from the table. "Tell me what you need." I lifted my chin. "A charger. A clean wall. Your yacht's name visible behind me." His eyes narrowed slightly. "Why the name?" "Because Nathan said I disappeared. I want him to know exactly where the truth learned to float. Julian did not ask me whether I was certain. He only turned to Marcus and said, "Set the aft deck. White wall. Clear the crew from the frame. Keep the yacht name visible." Then he looked back at me. "Your phone will be charged in 5 minutes. Use mine until then." He handed me his phone without opening anything, without hovering, without asking for my password to anything in return. It was heavier than mine, black, clean, and full of a world I did not want to understand. I held it like borrowed power. The aft deck smelled of salt, polished wood, and the faint sweetness of flowers from some arrangement that had nothing to do with my wedding. Wind lifted the torn edge of my veil. The Miami skyline hovered behind us, bright and careless, a row of glass towers watching a bride decide whether she would let a groom turn her fear into evidence against her. Marcus adjusted the angle of the phone on a small stand. Another crew member moved a white cushion out of frame. Julian stayed near the open doorway, far enough not to appear, close enough that everyone remembered whose yacht this was. "Do you want me beside you?" he asked. The question surprised me more than it should have. Nathan would have stepped into the frame before I answered. He would have placed a hand on my shoulder and called it support. Julian waited. I looked at the camera. My dress was wrinkled, the hem stained, my hair slipping from its pins. I looked nothing like the perfect bride from the hotel photographs. Good. Perfect had almost cost me my brother. "No," I said. "This one is mine." Julian nodded and stepped farther back. I pressed record. For 1 second, the red dot made my throat close. Then I thought of Noah in his hospital room, asking if I had found the note. I thought of my father hiding a door inside a bouquet. I thought of Nathan telling cameras I was fragile because the truth had outrun him. "My name is Ava Monroe," I said. My voice shook on the first word and steadied on the second. I am not missing. I am not confused. I am not being held against my will. I left my wedding today because I heard Nathan Vale discussing plans to use our marriage to gain access to my brother Noah Monroe's medical trust and decision authority. The wind moved across the deck. I kept going. I have contacted Noah's hospital and my family attorney. I have not authorized Nathan Vale, the Vale family, or anyone connected to them to access Noah's fund, medical information, or legal decisions. Any statement claiming I am unstable, missing, or unable to speak for myself is false. My hands tightened around the bouquet stem hidden just below the frame. My father left evidence regarding the Vale family and their use of trusts, charities, and port businesses. That evidence is being secured by my attorney. I am safe enough to speak, and I am speaking now because no woman should have to become legally silent to prove she is loved. I stopped recording before tears could claim the ending. Not because tears were weak. Because Nathan had already built a story around them, and I refused to hand him the scene he wanted. Marcus sent the video to Aunt June through an encrypted link, then to a second contact she provided. My own phone blinked back to life on the table, flooding with missed calls, messages, headlines, and one voicemail from Nathan. I did not play it. I deleted it with my thumb and felt nothing but air. Julian watched that small act like it mattered. "You did well," he said. "Do not sound surprised." "I am not." He looked toward the water. "I am impressed." The word warmed me before I could stop it. That annoyed me, so I looked away. "Where are we now?" Marcus answered from the tablet. 15 minutes from the port entrance. Vale Maritime has 2 vehicles near Monroe Storage. News vans still at the hotel. Police have not been contacted by Vale yet, probably because they do not want formal questions. Julian's expression cooled. They wanted a missing bride, not a legal record. My phone buzzed in my hand. "Aunt June." I answered. "The video is live," she said. "Local stations have it. So does the hospital." Nathan just lost control of the word missing. I closed my eyes. The ocean sounded different then. Less like distance. More like return. And the storage unit? I am on my way there with a notary and a trust officer. Do not go alone. I looked at Julian. He heard enough from my face. "You will not," he said. I covered the phone. That sounded like a command. He corrected himself immediately. "You should not. I am asking to accompany you because Vale will have people watching. And because you want what is inside." He did not flinch. Yes. Honest. Dangerous. Better than sweet. I uncovered the phone. We are coming to the port, I told June. I am bringing witnesses. When I ended the call, Julian stepped beside the rail, leaving a careful space between us. Miami grew larger ahead. The city I had fled was waiting with cameras, contracts, and a groom who thought my fear made me easy to rewrite. I touched the note from Noah tucked inside my bouquet and breathed in salt. I had boarded the wrong yacht by mistake. But for the first time that day, every choice after it was mine. The yacht entered the port like a secret returning to the city in daylight. Miami rose ahead in glass and heat, but I saw it differently now, not as the place I had escaped, but as the place I was about to correct. My wedding dress had dried stiff at the hem, salt marking the satin in pale lines. My veil hung over one arm. The bouquet was no longer flowers. It was evidence. Julian stood near the rail, speaking quietly into his phone, arranging things without making them sound arranged. Marcus watched the dock through binoculars and named every vehicle waiting near the service road. Black SUV. Silver sedan. White van with no logo. Vale Maritime Security at the North Gate. I looked at Julian. You said no one had called the police. Not publicly. And privately? Privately, rich families call favors before they call law. That should have frightened me more. Instead, it confirmed what I had always felt around Nathan's world. Rules existed, but only poor people were expected to meet them at the front door. Aunt June's text arrived as we neared the marina. At Monroe Storage with notary and trust officer. Waiting outside Unit 417. News has your video. Hospital confirmed your authority. I read the message twice, then held the phone to my chest. Noah was safe for now. Not forever. Not legally untouchable. But the first door Nathan had tried to close was open again. The yacht slowed. Lines were thrown. Crew moved with quiet precision. I expected Julian to step ahead of me, to take control the moment we touched land. Instead, he stayed beside the gangway and waited until I moved first. You know they will photograph you, he said. They already have. This will be different. I looked down at my dress, my borrowed deck shoes, my bouquet wrapped around a secret code. Good. Let them photograph the version Nathan did not approve. Julian's eyes held mine for a second, and something passed there that felt less like obsession and more like recognition. Not hunger. Not ownership. Attention with restraint. Then walk slowly, he said. Why? Because people who expect you to run do not know what to do when you arrive. I hated how much I liked that sentence. I stepped onto the dock. The sun hit me full in the face. Cameras were not there yet, but phones were. Dock workers stared. A woman in sunglasses whispered into someone else's shoulder. Two men near the silver sedan straightened. Marcus moved behind me, not close enough to crowd, close enough to witness. Julian walked at my left, 3 feet away, hands visible, expression unreadable. Ava. Nathan's voice cut across the dock before I saw him. He came from beside the black SUV in his tuxedo, jacket open now, hair perfect enough to insult the day. Relief spread over his face like paint. Thank God. He started toward me with both arms slightly raised, the pose of a man expecting cameras even before they arrived. I stopped. Julian stopped with me. Nathan's eyes flicked to him, and the relief cracked. Cross. Julian said nothing. The silence was more elegant than a threat. Nathan turned back to me, softening his voice. Ava, sweetheart, you scared everyone. Come with me. We can handle this privately. Privately. That word again. A room with locked windows. A signature before midnight. I lifted my phone and started recording. Nathan saw the red dot and froze. Do not call me sweetheart, I said. My voice carried across the dock. Do not say I am confused. Do not say I am missing. And do not come closer unless my attorney tells you to. His jaw tightened, then relaxed into hurt. Ava, you are making a mistake. No, I said. I made one when I believed you. Today I am correcting it. A small group had gathered now. Not many. Enough. Nathan lowered his voice, but the phone caught it. You have no idea who you are standing beside. I glanced at Julian. I know enough to know he handed me a phone when you handed me a lie. Nathan's face changed. Real anger rarely looks dramatic at first. It looks like charm forgetting its lines. Before he could answer, a black sedan pulled in behind us and Aunt June stepped out in a navy suit, silver hair pinned back, carrying a leather folder like she had been waiting for years to use it. "Ava," she called. "This way." I walked past Nathan. He reached out, not grabbing, just reaching as if habit still believed I belonged within arm's length. Julian's voice stopped him cold. "No, one word. Low. Enough." Nathan's hand dropped. I did not look back until we reached the storage office, where Aunt June, a notary, and a trust officer stood beneath a buzzing fluorescent light. "Are you ready?" June asked. I looked at Unit 417 across the lot, its blue metal door waiting under the afternoon sun. My father had hidden a truth there. Noah had carried the code. I had carried the flowers. Julian had carried the space for me to choose. "Yes," I said. "But I open it." Unit 417 looked smaller than a secret should look. Blue metal door, silver lock, faded numbers peeling at the edges, a strip of sunlight lying across the concrete like a warning. I stood in front of it with my ruined wedding dress brushing my ankles and Noah's note folded inside my palm. Aunt June stood on my right with the notary and trust officer. Julian stood behind me, far enough that no one could say he guided my hand, close enough that Nathan and the two veil men across the lot did not forget there were witnesses. "Ava," Nathan called, his voice polished thin. "You do not have to do this here." I turned just enough for my phone to catch him in the frame. "Then where would you prefer I learn the truth, Nathan? After the vows? After midnight? After my brother's fund transferred?" His face tightened. Aunt June touched my elbow lightly. "For the record, Ava Monroe is present voluntarily and has requested access to Monroe Storage Unit 417 using the code provided by her father, Daniel Monroe, and verified by trust documentation." The notary nodded. The trust officer opened his tablet. "Proceed when ready." Ready was a strange word. I was still in borrowed deck shoes. My hair had fallen over one shoulder. My bouquet was dying in Marcus's hands because I had asked him to hold it like evidence, and he had looked almost terrified of crushing the petals. I entered the 6 numbers Noah had hidden for me. The lock blinked red. My stomach dropped. "Again," Aunt June said softly. I tried once more, slower. "Red." Nathan laughed under his breath behind us. "Ava, sweetheart, your father loved puzzles. Maybe you misunderstood." Julian's voice came from behind me, quiet as the tide. "Do not help her doubt herself." Nathan stopped laughing. I closed my eyes. Dad said if Nathan smiles too much, run. I saw Noah's handwriting. I saw my father at our kitchen table, tapping codes into my old bike lock and telling me numbers were only half the door. The other half was what the person loved enough to remember. "Not 6 numbers, I whispered. 6 numbers and a word." The trust officer looked up. "The keypad accepts letters if you press mode." Aunt June's eyes sharpened. "What word?" I looked at the dead bouquet. "Noah." The name opened something in me before it opened the lock. I pressed mode, entered the numbers, then NOAH, green light. Click. The door rolled up with a metallic groan, revealing dust, cardboard boxes, plastic bins, and the smell of heat trapped around old paper. No gold. No dramatic treasure. Just the kind of storage unit families keep when grief has too many rooms and not enough courage to empty them. On the back wall sat a gray fireproof case with my father's initials. DM. My hands shook as I lifted it onto a folding table Aunt June had brought. Inside were labeled folders, a sealed flash drive, a stack of port charity reports, and a video recorder wrapped in a blue dish towel from our old kitchen. On top was an envelope addressed to me and Noah. I opened it with fingers that remembered being a daughter. My father's handwriting waited inside. "Ava, if this box opens because of the Vale family, then I was right to be afraid and wrong to think I had more time. Forgive me for both." I had to stop. The words blurred, and for once, I did not care who saw. Julian looked away, giving my grief privacy in public. That small mercy nearly broke me. I kept reading. The Vale family built their clean money through medical charities, guardianship transfers, and port contracts that moved funds through people too overwhelmed to ask questions. Noah's trust was protected because I made sure no husband, fiancé, or outside guardian could touch it without your direct consent. If someone tried to use marriage to reach it, open this case, call June, and do not let them make you sound unstable. My breath trembled. He had known the exact shape of Nathan's lie. Aunt June removed the flash drive and sealed it in an evidence pouch. This goes straight to the trust office and law enforcement contacts your father listed. Nathan stepped forward. Those documents are privileged family material. I turned with the letter in my hand. Not your family. His mask slipped then, just for a second. Enough for the camera. Enough for me. You have no idea what Cross will do with this, he said. I looked at Julian. He did not defend himself. He did not reach for the files. He stood with both hands visible, watching me choose. Maybe, I said. But you tried to marry the truth out of my hands. He waited for me to open the door. The trust officer connected the recorder to a small speaker. My father's voice filled the storage unit, warm with static. Ava, protect your brother. Then protect yourself. In that order if you must, but both if you can. I pressed Noah's note against my heart. Across the lot, the first news van turned in, drawn by my video, my name, my refusal to vanish. Nathan looked toward it, and for the first time all day, he was the one searching for an exit. The news van turned into Monroe storage slowly, as if even the driver understood the air had changed. Nathan saw it before anyone else did, and the look on his face told me everything I needed to know about men who loved cameras only when they controlled the frame. The first reporter stepped out with a microphone, then a second followed with a shoulder camera, both glancing from my wedding dress to Nathan's tuxedo to Julian Cross standing in quiet black near the open unit. Aunt June moved first, not toward the reporters, but toward me. Ava, you do not have to speak again. I looked at the gray fireproof case, at my father's letter, at the flash drive sealed in plastic, at the bouquet Marcus, still held like it might testify if handled gently enough. I know. That was the difference now. I knew I did not have to. Which meant if I did, the voice was mine. Nathan walked toward the reporters with his palms open and his face rearranged into concern. This is a private family situation, he called. My fiancé has had a very emotional day. Fiancé. The word snapped something clean inside me. Not loud. Not messy. Clean. I stepped forward before Aunt June could stop me, before Julian could even shift his weight. The reporter recognized me from the video and lifted the microphone. Miss Monroe, are you here voluntarily? Yes. My voice sounded steadier than my heartbeat. I am here with my attorney, a trust officer, a notary, and witnesses. I am not missing. I am not confused. And I am not his fiancé anymore. Nathan turned slowly. His smile stayed, but only because people were watching. Ava, do not do this in public. I looked at him, really looked, at the man who had learned my favorite coffee order, but not my boundaries, who had held my hand in hospital rooms while asking lawyers how to take the door keys from my brother's future. You made me public when you stood in front of cameras and called me fragile. The reporter's eyes widened. The camera light blinked red. Nathan lowered his voice. You are standing next to Julian Cross. I am standing next to evidence. Aunt June stepped beside me then and held up the sealed pouch. Documents recovered from Unit 417 were placed here by Daniel Monroe and are being transferred to appropriate legal authorities. They concern the attempted misuse of medical trusts, guardianship structures, port contracts, and related shell entities. The phrase shell entities made the reporter straighten like someone had just handed her a better story. Nathan's father arrived then in a white SUV, stepping out in a gray suit with the tired confidence of a man accustomed to cleaning rooms after his son ruined them. Turn that camera off, he said to the crew. The camera did not move. Julian finally spoke, soft enough that the reporters had to lean closer. Careful, Richard. The last thing your family needs today is another recorded instruction. Richard Vale's face tightened at Julian's use of his first name. You are interfering in matters that do not concern you. Julian's eyes moved to the fireproof case. Your family used my port contracts to hide your paper trails. That concerns me. I turned to him. What does that mean? He looked at me, and for the first time since the yacht, I saw him choose a truth that made him less powerful in front of everyone. It means some of the companies in those records touched businesses under my control. I did not build the scheme, but I benefited from not asking enough questions. The reporters caught every word. So did I. Nathan seized on it. There. He admits it. He is using you to protect himself. I waited for Julian to defend himself. He did not. He let the accusations stand where I could see its shape. That honesty was not clean. It was costly. I looked at him and understood why obsession was the wrong word for what had been growing in his eyes. He was not obsessed with owning me. He was trapped by the way my truth forced his own to surface. Maybe he is protecting himself, I said. Maybe everyone here is. I faced the camera again. That is why evidence matters more than promises. Aunt June nodded once. The trust officer sealed another folder. Behind us, Marcus placed the bouquet on the folding table beside the note Noah had hidden. White petals, green floss, 6 numbers, 1 name. Ordinary things carrying extraordinary weight. Richard Vale stepped toward the table. Those files belong to my company. The notary, a small woman with silver glasses and a voice like steel wrapped in paper, replied, "Then you may make that claim through counsel after the chain of custody is complete." I almost smiled. Power did not always wear black suits. Sometimes it wore sensible shoes and carried a stamp. More vehicles arrived then. Not dramatic. Not sirens. Just official sedans, men and women with badges, folders, and expressions trained not to react to wedding dresses in storage lots. Nathan looked at me one last time, and behind the anger, I saw panic. Real panic. The kind I had carried all morning. The kind that makes a person search for the nearest open door. "Ava," he said, softer now. "We could have fixed this." I shook my head. "No. You wanted me signed, sealed, and quiet. That is not fixed. That is filed away." Julian stood 3 feet behind me, close enough to hear, far enough not to become my answer. The officials approached. Aunt June handed over the sealed drive. The reporter whispered into her microphone. Miami traffic hummed beyond the storage gate, and I realized the runaway bride story had ended the moment I stopped running. What stood there in its place was a woman in a ruined dress, holding her father's letter, watching the men who wrote contracts learn that truth could write back. The officials did not rush when they entered Unit 417. That was the strange thing about real consequences. They did not arrive with music or raised voices. They arrived with clipboards, sealed bags, careful questions, and people who knew exactly how to make panic become procedure. Aunt June stayed beside me while the flash drive, port reports, trust documents, and my father's video recorder were logged one by one. The notary repeated my name, the time, the location, and the fact that I had opened the unit voluntarily. Every sentence felt like another nail being pulled from a door Nathan had tried to lock from the outside. Across the lot, Nathan stood with his father, no longer performing concern for cameras, no longer reaching for me with hands trained to look gentle. His tuxedo had wrinkled in the heat. Mine had too. We were both dressed for a wedding that no longer existed, but only one of us looked like the costume still fit. Julian remained near the edge of the storage unit, speaking quietly with an investigator about shell companies, port contracts, and transactions I barely understood. He did not hide his name from the conversation. He did not ask for special treatment. He placed his phone, his company records, and his own counsel's contact information on the table like a man setting down weapons before asking whether truth would still let him stand. I watched him for longer than I meant to. Aunt June noticed. "Be careful with men who look noble while confessing," she said softly. "Sometimes confession is just another kind of strategy." I know. Do you? I looked at Julian's profile, the hard line of his jaw, the stillness in his shoulders, the way he never once tried to make himself the center of my rescue. I know he is dangerous. June touched my arm. Dangerous is not always the first problem. Useful can be worse. That sentence stayed with me. Useful. I had almost become useful to Nathan. Useful as a wife. Useful as a signature. Useful as the sister who loved Noah too much to read every page. I looked down at my father's letter and pressed my thumb over the ink. Then I will not become useful to anyone today. By early evening, the sun had turned the storage lot gold and the ocean air had cooled. The reporters were kept behind a line of orange cones. The officials asked me to confirm again that I had not been forced onto Julian's yacht, and I told them the truth. I had boarded by mistake. I had stayed long enough to speak because I was given a phone, information, and a choice. One investigator looked at Julian when I said that. Julian looked at me. He did not look relieved. He looked responsible. Nathan tried one more time as they walked him toward a waiting sedan for questioning. Ava, he called, not loudly, just enough to pull my name through the space between us. I turned. Not because I owed him attention. Because I wanted the last image between us to be my face unafraid. Tell Noah I am sorry, he said. I stared at him. Sorry was such a soft word for a man who had built a cage out of concern. No, I said. You can tell the truth to people who record it. His father said something under his breath, but the investigator beside him asked him to repeat it, and he went quiet. I almost smiled. Cameras were not the only things that made men behave. Documentation did too. When the sedan doors closed, the storage lot seemed to exhale. Aunt June handed me a folder with copies of everything she was allowed to give me. Noah's authority is protected for now. The hospital has written confirmation. We will file emergency notices tonight. My knees nearly softened with relief. Julian stepped closer, stopping several feet away. Do you need transportation? He asked. Aunt June raised one eyebrow. I answered before she could. I need to see my brother. Then I can arrange a car. I have June. He nodded once, accepting the boundary before it had to become sharper. Good. I expected him to leave. Instead, he looked at the bouquet on the folding table. May I? I followed his gaze. The white roses were nearly gone, petals browned at the edges from heat and salt. Why? Because it got you here. I did not understand, but I nodded. He took one fallen petal, nothing more, and placed it carefully inside his wallet. The gesture should have felt strange. Maybe it was. But it did not feel possessive. It felt like a man marking the moment he stopped confusing opportunity with permission. Ava, he said, what happened on my yacht gave me a way to confront the vows. But you were never mine to use. I held my father's folder against my chest. Then proved that by letting me leave without turning around to see if you follow. His gray eyes held mine. Done. Not sweet. Not dramatic. Just obedience to a line I had drawn. I walked to Aunt June's car without looking back. Every step away from him felt like a test, not of his interest, but of his respect. When I reached the passenger door, I finally allowed myself one glance through the window reflection. Julian Cross stood exactly where I had left him, 3 feet from the ruined bouquet, hands empty, waiting at the edge of a story he had helped me reclaim but did not own. I did not look back until Aunt June's car turned out of Monroe storage and merged into Miami traffic. Only then, through the side mirror, did I see the porch shrinking behind us, all blue metal doors, orange cones, official sedans, and the white edge of Julian Cross's yacht visible beyond the marina fence. He was no longer in view. Good. That was what I had asked for. Still, my hands held my father's folder too tightly, as if paper could feel the difference between fear and freedom. Aunt June drove without music. She had always believed silence was useful when truth needed room to settle. My phone buzzed every few seconds with messages, headlines, unknown numbers, and Chloe finally reaching me through a flood of apologies. Her number had been spoofed. She had never sent me to slip 22. She had been locked out of the bridal suite by Nathan's cousin and had spent an hour thinking I was trapped somewhere inside the hotel. I told her I was alive. I told her I would call later. Then I turned the phone face down because the only voice I needed was waiting at the hospital. Noah's room smelled like antiseptic, clean sheets, and lemon hand soap. He was sitting up when I walked in, too pale, too thin, too young to have hidden a message inside his sister's wedding flowers. The moment he saw my dress, his face crumpled. You look terrible, he whispered. I laughed once, and it came out like a sob with better manners. You should see the groom. He held out his arms. I went at him carefully, mindful of the lines near his bed, and let my forehead rest against his shoulder. For the first time all day, I stopped performing strength. Noah patted my back like he was the older one. Did the code work? Your name opened the door. His breath caught. Dad did that. Dad knew what mattered. I sat beside him and showed him the folder. Not every document, not the heavy parts, but enough. His note. The letter. The confirmation from Aunt June that his care decisions were protected. Noah touched the paper with 2 fingers, like it might vanish if handled too quickly. Nathan came by earlier, he said. My body went still. What? Before the video. He told the nurses he was family now. He brought flowers. His mouth twisted. Not as good as mine. I forced air into my lungs. Did he come into your room? No. Dr. Palmer stopped him. She said weddings do not update hospital permissions. Relief made me dizzy. I owe Dr. Palmer a cake. Make it chocolate. I smiled, then looked at his hands. You should have told me about the blue folder sooner. He stared down at the blanket. I was scared you would still marry him. The sentence hurt because it was honest. I had been so determined to believe love could be earned by patience that my little brother had needed a secret plan against my wedding. I am sorry, I said. I thought keeping everything calm was protecting you. Noah looked at me with tired eyes, too much like our father's. Calm is not always safe. Outside the window, sunset turned the hospital glass gold. Aunt June stood near the door, speaking softly with Dr. Palmer. My video played silently on the television above the dresser, a ruined bride on a yacht telling Miami she was not missing. I barely recognized myself. Not because I looked different, but because I sounded like someone who had finally stopped asking permission to be believed. My phone buzzed once more. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, then saw the message preview. This is Julian. No response needed. The hospital has my written statement that you boarded by mistake and remained voluntarily. I will not contact you again unless you choose it. I stared at the words until they blurred. No response needed. Not another hook. Not another door disguised as concern. Just space. Noah watched my face. Is that him? Who? The yacht guy. Do not call him that. The scary yacht guy? Despite myself, I smiled. Better. Noah grinned weakly, then grew serious. Was he nice? I thought about Julian handing me a phone, stepping out of frame, stopping Nathan with one word, admitting his own businesses might be stained, standing still when I walked away. No, I said softly. Nice is too small. Noah nodded like that made perfect sense. Did he help? I looked at the city beyond the window, all lights coming on one by one. He made room. And maybe that was why, for the first time since running from the altar, I let myself imagine tomorrow without hearing Nathan's voice inside it. By morning, the city had already chosen sides, then changed them twice before lunch. Headlines called me the runaway bride, the yacht bride, the trust heiress, the woman who exposed the veil paper trail. None of them called me tired, which was the truest thing I was. Aunt June filed emergency protections before sunrise. Dr. Palmer confirmed Noah's medical authority in writing. The hospital added a bright red note to his file that no member of the Vale family, by blood, business, or almost marriage, had permission to access anything about him. Noah asked if that meant Nathan could not send flowers anymore. I told him he could send them to the trash. He laughed so hard the nurse told us both to behave. That laugh became my first victory of the day. The second came at 2 in the afternoon when June received confirmation that investigators had opened a formal review into Vale Maritime, several port charities, and the guardianship transfer structures my father had documented. I expected relief to feel like music. Instead, it felt like standing after holding my breath too long. My body shook. My mind kept reaching for the next danger because peace, when you have lived without it, feels suspicious at first. Julian kept his word. No calls. No flowers. No black car waiting beneath the hospital entrance. Only one envelope delivered through Aunt June, addressed to me sealed, with no pressure attached. Inside was a copy of his full written statement, the same one he had given investigators. It confirmed I had boarded Sea Grace by mistake. It confirmed he had provided a phone, recording access, and transportation only with my consent. It confirmed his companies were voluntarily submitting records connected to Vale Maritime. At the bottom, beneath his signature, was one handwritten line: "I will not make your truth pay rent in my story." I read that sentence 3 times. Then I folded the paper and put it away because some doors are safest when left closed for a while, even if they open onto sunlight. A week passed. Then 2. Nathan's carefully polished version of events collapsed under documents, hospital logs, and his own recorded words at the storage lot. His family called everything complicated. Aunt June said complicated was what guilty people called a knot after honest hands began untying it. Noah improved enough to sit by the window again, sketching boats he claimed were much better than Julian's because they had rocket engines and snack bars. Chloe came to the hospital with mascara under her eyes and guilt in both hands. I forgave her because the text had not been hers, and because friendship should not be destroyed by a man who learned how to steal voices. I did not forgive the part of myself that had almost married Nathan, not at first. That took longer. It took quiet mornings, legal signatures that protected Noah, and one afternoon when I finally opened the garment bag holding my wedding dress. The satin smelled faintly like salt. I touched the stained hem and did not cry. Then I cut a small square from the inner lining, wrapped Noah's note inside it, and placed it in my father's folder. The rest of the dress went to a theater program that made costumes for students who could not afford them. I liked the idea of it becoming something pretend after almost turning me into someone else's real possession. On the 21st day, Noah was discharged to continue treatment from home. Aunt June drove us to the marina because Noah insisted he needed to see the yacht that had ruined a wedding and saved a trust. I told him yachts did not save people. People made choices. He said that was exactly why he wanted to see where mine changed direction. Sea Grace was docked at Slip 22, white and quiet under a clear afternoon sky. Julian stood on the dock, not on the yacht, not above me, not waiting at the door. At the dock. Just as the man he was becoming should. Noah rolled down the window and whispered, "Scary yacht guy looks nervous." He did. That almost undid me. Julian Cross, the man Miami feared, stood with both hands visible and no certainty in his face. I stepped out of the car before Aunt June could ask if I was sure. "You waited," I said. He looked at the dock beneath his shoes, then back at me. "You told me not to follow." "That is different from waiting." "I know." The ocean moved gently against the pilings. For once, there was no engine pulling me away, no groom rewriting me, no camera demanding a performance. Just sun, salt, and a man who had learned that distance could be respect. "Why are you here?" I asked. Julian's gaze moved briefly to Noah in the car, then returned to me. "To say the yacht was my world before you stepped onto it by mistake. If you ever step onto it again, it should be because you choose the water, not because you need an exit." I breathed in slowly. The air tasted like salt and beginnings. "I am not ready to board." His answer came without hesitation. "Then I will stay on the dock." 1 month after I ran from the altar, Noah taped a drawing of Sea Grace above his desk and labeled it the wrong boat that did one right thing. I told him the title was too long. He told me I had terrible branding for someone who accidentally became national news in a wedding dress. Life did not become simple after the truth came out. Truth rarely cleans the whole room at once. It opens the windows first. The Vale family hired lawyers who used words like misunderstanding, pressure, and emotional circumstances. Aunt June used words like documented, fraudulent, and no. Investigators followed the money through port charities, medical trusts, shell companies, and signatures that had been taken from people too tired, too grieving, or too afraid to ask why kindness came with paperwork. Nathan disappeared from the cameras when the cameras stopped helping him. The last time I saw him was not in person, but in a grainy courthouse clip online, his face pale beneath fluorescent lights, his charm finally useless in a room built for records instead of romance. I did not celebrate. Not because he deserved mercy, but because I deserved peace more than revenge. Noah's fund stayed protected. His care team stayed his care team. Chloe cried every time she saw Marina for 2 weeks, then recovered enough to joke that my next emergency plan should involve a coffee shop, not organized crime and ocean travel. I laughed because I could. That was new. I moved out of the apartment Nathan had helped choose and into a smaller place near Biscayne Bay, with uneven floors, noisy neighbors, and windows that opened wide enough to let the salt air in. I bought my own couch. I signed my own lease. I kept my father's folder in a blue metal box under my bed, not because I was afraid anymore, but because some truths deserve a safe place after carrying you through fire. Julian did not rush me. That became the quietest proof of him. No surprise visits. No pressure dressed as concern. No using the story to turn himself into a savior. His companies remained under review, and he let that happen publicly. When reporters asked about me, he said only one sentence: "Miss Monroe speaks for herself." I hated how much that moved me. I hated it less by the third month. The first time I stepped back onto Sea Grace, I did it in jeans, sandals, and a white cotton shirt that had never been near an altar. Noah came with me, sitting proudly in the shaded aft lounge while Marcus brought him lemonade and pretended not to enjoy being asked whether the yacht could be fitted with rocket engines. Julian stood at the gangway when I arrived, not offering his hand until I looked down at the narrow step and lifted my eyes to his. "May I?" he asked. Always that question now. "May I?" I placed my hand in his for 3 seconds, long enough to cross, short enough to remind us both that help was not ownership. The deck looked different without panic. The white wall where I had recorded my statement had been left empty. No art. No plaque. No dramatic reminder. Just clean space and ocean light. "You kept it blank," I said. Julian looked at it. "It is yours to remember or forget." "That sounds expensive." "Restraint usually is." I smiled before I could stop myself. We took the yacht nowhere that day. It stayed tied to the dock while Noah sketched impossible boats and Aunt June inspected the crew with the expression of a woman who trusted paperwork more than men with cheekbones. Near sunset, I walked to the bow alone. Julian joined me only after I turned and made room beside the rail. The water below caught the last light in broken gold pieces. "People still say I became your obsession," I said. His jaw tightened. "People like turning women into trophies and men into legends. It saves them from understanding choices." I looked at him then, this dangerous man who had become most trustworthy when he stopped trying to be necessary. And what did I become? He did not answer quickly. I liked that. "The first person who made my power feel insufficient," he said. "And the first who made me grateful for that." The wind moved between us, warm and salt bright. I thought about the altar, the dead phone, the wrong slip, the note in the bouquet, the way fear had carried me onto a yacht and choice had carried me back to myself. "I am still not yours," I said. Julian's eyes softened, not with disappointment, but with understanding that had learned to stand upright. "No," he said. "But I would like to be someone you choose to stand beside." The city lights came on behind us one by one. I did not give him a promise. Not then. I gave him something better because it was honest. I stayed until the sun disappeared, then walked down the gangway by myself, knowing he would be there tomorrow only if I wanted him to be. Real love, I learned, does not turn the wrong boat into a cage. It ties itself to the dock, opens the gate, and waits until the woman who ran out of one life is ready to choose the next.